Welcome to Echo Tales. Title: The Shadow in the Mirror. Part 1. The New Apartment. Emma had just moved into her new apartment, a small but cozy one-bedroom in an old building downtown. It was her first place alone, and she loved the independence it offered. The apartment had a charm to it. Antique fixtures, wooden floors, large windows that let in plenty of light during the day. But there was something odd about the bathroom mirror. It was an old, ornate mirror, built into the wall, stretching from the sink to the ceiling. The glass was slightly foggy, no matter how much she cleaned it. Emma shrugged it off as part of the apartment's character and focused on unpacking. After all, she had bigger things to worry about: a new job, new city, and adjusting to life on her own. Part 2. First Sight. The first few nights in the apartment were peaceful, but one evening, as Emma brushed her teeth, she noticed something strange. In the mirror's reflection, there seemed to be a dark shape behind her, just barely visible in the corner of her eye. She turned quickly, but nothing was there. "Just tired," she muttered to herself, shaking off the unease. But the feeling lingered, a sense that she wasn't quite alone. The next day, while getting ready for work, she noticed the shape again. This time clearer, like a shadow that didn't belong. Flickered at the edge of her vision, just behind her in the mirror. Again, she spun around, but there was nothing there. The apartment was empty, as always. The shadow grows. Over the next week, the shadow became more frequent. It seemed to grow darker and closer, always in the reflection, but never in the room itself. Emma began to dread using the bathroom. She found herself avoiding the mirror, but every time she glanced at it, the shadow was there, closer than before. One night, as she lay in bed, Emma heard soft whispering. At first, she thought it was coming from outside, but the sound was too close, too intimate. She realized, with a chill, that the whispering was coming from the bathroom. Gathering her courage, she crept toward the bathroom and peeked inside. The light flickered ominously. In the mirror, the shadow stood clearly behind her reflection. A tall, dark figure, indistinct but unmistakably there. Her heart raced as she stared at it. She slowly reached out her hand toward the mirror, but as soon as her fingertips grazed the glass, the lights went out. Part 4. The terror intensified. Emma fumbled for the switch, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The lights flickered back on, and the shadow was gone. But now, Emma knew something was terribly wrong. She called the building manager the next morning, asking if anyone had experienced anything strange in the apartment. The manager was hesitant, finally confessed. There was an incident a few years ago. A tenant, a woman, she died in the apartment. In the bathroom, to be specific. No one knows exactly what happened, but since then, that apartment's been difficult to rent. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The whispering returned, louder now, almost as if it was inside her head. She bolted upright, terrified, and looked toward the bathroom door. It was ajar, and from the mirror she could see the shadow, taller, clearer, and no longer confined to just the reflection. It seemed to be watching her, waiting. Part 5. Final Confrontation. Emma decided she couldn't stay there any longer. The next day, she packed her things and called for a moving truck. But as night fell, she realized she'd have to endure one more night in the apartment. That evening, the whispering was louder than ever. The shadow now stood in the doorway, visible without the mirror. It was no longer a vague figure. It was a woman, face twisted in anguish, her dark eyes locked on Emma. "Why are you here?" Emma whispered, frozen in fear. Figure didn't respond, but the whispering grew louder, surrounding her, echoing off the walls. In a panic, Emma ran to the bathroom, desperate to understand. She stood before the mirror, trembling, and looked at the reflection. In the mirror, the shadow woman reached out toward Emma's reflection, cold hand grazing Emma's. The touch sent a shiver down her spine, and suddenly, Emma felt herself being pulled toward the mirror. The glass rippled like water, and her reflection began to distort, merging with the shadow. "No!" Emma screamed, struggling to break free. Force was too strong. Her vision blurred as the room around her twisted. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was the woman's face in the mirror, staring back at her, now identical to her own. Part 6. The Aftermath. Days later, the apartment was quiet once more. A new tenant moved in, a young man unaware of the building's history. As he unpacked his things, he paused by the bathroom and glanced in the mirror. For a brief moment, he thought he saw something. Flicker of movement. A shadow. But when he looked closer, it was just his reflection. Or was it? He shrugged it off and closed the bathroom door behind him, completely unaware that behind the glass, a new shadow now watched and waited. The shadow in the mirror concludes with a lingering sense of dread, an endless cycle where the apartment's haunted past continues to claim new victims. For more videos, subscribe to my channel.